There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thank you guys so much for tuning into this brand new interview, a very early morning interview over here in the States. I have a very, very special guest with me. This individual right here, you may have seen him on NXT UK as a part of a great, great commentary team, but he was also a ring announcer at one point. He also hosted a lot in the British MMA fighting scene as well. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I am here with the one and only Andy Shepherd. How are you?
You with your great introduction. I'm good. Yeah. Hey, look, thank you for waking up early. I know there's a bit of a time difference between where you are and where I am, so I appreciate you waking up and having a chat. It's the afternoon here, so yeah. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Stuff here in the UK is, I mean, we're all going through this lockdown situation right now. Stuff's starting to ease here in the UK, so there are little bits of normality trickling back in. We're not quite there yet. But it's, yeah, in short, stuff's okay right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, like you mentioned before, stuff is easy and over in the other parts of the world. Sadly, over here in beautiful California, we went from going forward to going backwards. So
peaks and troughs. It's all peaks and troughs right now. You're in a trough right now.
Yeah, but hey, eventually we'll all get back to normal, and hopefully we'll all get back to where we are with the actual fans in the crowd. But other than that, it is what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I always start these interviews with like a spitball or fireball question. So with Andy, with you in particular, I've always been a fan of your ring announcing. And so,
thank you.
Something that I've been really interested in knowing was there ever any NXT UK event that you've ring announced and the crowd was either so behind you or they were so like, man, we have to hear this guy one more time?
The crowd at NXT UK are very unique. Anyone who's ever been to one of the live shows will know what I'm talking about. On TV, you get a smidge of that. You get the chance, the unique chance they have, and how they get behind the superstars. But when you're there at a live show, there's a few things that happen that you may not have been privy to. So something that happened pretty quick once we got NXT UK going was every time I'd get into the ring, they would make this noise, sort of, oh, as I was getting through the ropes. And so that's something that always, it haunts my dreams. It haunts my dreams, I tell you. I wake up in cold sweat thinking about the high pressure moments of getting into the ring. But you can always tell when when the crowd have been to other NXT UKs before, because they'll start doing that. They'll know that's something for whatever reason they enjoy doing. So talking about the crowd, they're always great. They're always hot as hell. I think at takeovers, they're always ones that stand out because there's something special. Like any big event, they know that so much is hanging on that night, that so many issues are potentially going to get resolved. And I think if I'm going to pick out, one of the more recent events, it's the first takeover we had in Blackpool last January. I remember I was so hyped. There's one moment that stands out. Actually, it was the first match of the night. It was to crown the inaugural NXT UK Tag Team Champions, the Grizzly Young Veterans going off against Mustache Mountain. And Trent and Tyler were coming out. And Trent Seven is a hyped man any day, let alone at the first ever NXT UK takeover. And I'm announcing the guys. I'm already at an 11 out of 10 because of what that moment is. And I lock eyes. With Trent as I'm announcing him. And he's just looking at me and he's like, come on. I went on. And I think if you listen back to it, I'm literally screaming because I'm so hyped and Trent was getting me so hyped and we're all so hyped. So it's moments like that really stand out. And that's one of the cool things about being a ring announcer is that you're in there. You're in the heart of it. You're feeling everything that's going on. And you get multiple occasions each night to get inside that squared circle and feel the roar of the fans. So that's something that I truly feel privileged to have been able to experience time and time again.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, especially like you mentioned before, the roar of the crowd. That's absolutely something like you can't explain really, because it's such a great feeling having that roar of the crowd with you. That's something that I take account into myself, because I, as an aspiring ring announcer and commentator, it's like the roar of the crowd is something that inspires you to be out there. So
and they always talk about electricity. And it's something that I think it's hard to really grasp until you've truly been to one of these events in real life. But you'll know yourself at a big event. There's something in the air. There's something that just I'm getting goosebumps now talking about it because everyone in that room is so pumped. Right. So yeah, I mean, like coming to see like any sport entertainment live, particularly a brand like NXT UK, it's incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, speaking about Andy Shepherd, let's talk about your beginnings. I mean, obviously, you started out in British mixed martial arts, and then you started your way from there. Can you talk about what that opportunity was, starting out with MMA?
Yeah, I mean, I actually started out before MMA. I mean, I was pushing hard to try and break into this world for a long time. You know, I was working back then, and I still do on occasions work as a producer and a director behind the camera. So it was just hustling, and I did a few little things, and then there's a channel over here called SBTV, which is a big kind of youth online channel run by a guy called Jamal Edwards. And I remember I got in touch with Jamal, said, hey, you know, I used to be a track and field athlete. I really love sport. You guys do music. If you ever want to do any sports stuff, can we hook up? He was like, yeah, man, let's do some stuff. So I started hosting sports content for them. And that kind of opened some nice doors because it was a really cool platform. From there, I went on to do a few things. I was on a show to find like an apprentice style show to find a presenter for something called Blue Peter, which is a big kids TV show over here, which actually Radzi, one of my NXT UK counterparts, he was a presenter on as well. So a lot of intertwining rows there. Then I did things like Red Bull cliff diving and a whole bunch of different travel stuff. So just a hustle. The hustle was real. And then it was actually one of my first jobs as a presenter was hosting, I think it was like a ring girl competition. For, from an MMA company called BMMA. I remember I went to like a shopping centre in Birmingham in the UK and had to host this ringo competition. I don't think I'd hosted anything in my life, so I had no idea what I was doing. So I blagged my way through it, made some connections there with these guys, and this was years ago. And then I hassled them afterwards, being, hey, can I come and do some backstage reporting? Can I do anything? I want to be involved with you. At the time, BMMA was on Channel 5, which is a really big channel over here, so it was a great thing to be a part of. Mm-hmm. Nothing really happened. So following that, I went and did those things like SBTV and cliff diving and travel and all these things. And then a few years later, out of nowhere, I got a phone call from one of the guys who runs BMMA, a guy called David Green, who now actually runs Bellator here in Europe. Oh, wow. And he's like, what you doing this weekend? I was like, I don't know. What are you doing this weekend? Like, do you want to come and host BMMA? Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, like 100% for sure. Absolutely. Right. So I go up to Wolverhampton in the UK, host one of their shows. And I remember the main event was a guy called Tom Duquesnoy versus Christoph Klatchek, which now I can say their names. But when you've got 24 hours to try and prepare for a 16 fight card, and there are these people you've never heard of with names that are spelt, not in the way they're said, I remember just butchering their names on this live broadcast. But that was fun. And then from there, more opportunities came with BMMA, which was great. And then out of the back of that, I started working with David Hay, who's a former heavyweight boxing champion of the world. So I started co-hosting with him. He was our pundit. During that time, he decided he was going to come back and have another run at things in the boxing world. And, you know, I think we just struck up a good relationship. And he was like, you know, come and host some stuff for me, the press conferences, some of the shows. And again, that was a great opportunity for me because that opened me into sort of another audience. So it was a real kind of splodge to kind of get some traction, and these opportunities just appeared. I think a lot of it was building those relationships early on. Again, the BMMA thing came after 3 or 4 years of not having talked to them, but for some reason, David was like, "Oh, I'll call Andy." So that's how I kind of got my first sort of broadcasting experience and entered the world of combat sports.
That's awesome. And then, like you mentioned before, you entered such a new fan base, especially with mixed martial arts and kind of different from professional wrestling and all that. But I mean, it was still something different. And that's what I kind of love about this broadcasting industry is that you're just introduced with the whole different. You want to be here, but you're introduced to like soccer. Okay, well, not the path I was going to, but that's what's awesome about this industry.
Yeah, and I think I've always been a lifelong pro wrestling fan, lifelong. And then I went to do track and field, and so that was a passion as well. And MMA, when I started doing BMMA, you know, obviously UFC has been big for many years, but MMA was starting to kind of get its grips here in Europe. And so when I got the opportunity, I was like, yeah, because at that point, WWE was not an option. I mean, if I'm honest with you, years ago, the only option I kind of saw in WWE was, hey, maybe I could be a writer because I've got experience, you know, writing and producing. Maybe I could do that with WWE one day. But being a broadcaster with them, you know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, that wasn't on the cards because it was so far removed. There wasn't any kind of opportunity there. I wanted to be a wrestler when I was a kid, but you know, I value my knees now. So it's so going into MMA, it was like, oh, this is kind of like sports entertainment. It's got the same hype, and I love the hype around combat sports. And it's almost unlike any other form of sport, that the stories that are told going into the conflict, into the match, they're almost as important as what goes on in there, because you want to get carried away on this roller coaster of emotion. And so the stories that are told, whether that's at a UFC press conference, at a Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor press conference, or in a WWE with the storylines and the hype and everything that goes into it, I think those things are so important, because by the time you get to the match, you're so invested in it, and that adds so much more. So to go back to your question, entering into like MMA was like, wow, for me, this is probably about as close as I'm going to get to that WWE world. And so that's why I was so entrenched in it. And then I always loved boxing. And then when those opportunities came around, it was the same thing. It was getting to be part of that broadcast team, which helps you get hyped. I always loved being the person that was responsible for, if you just tuned in, if you didn't know the backstory to what was going on that evening, it's my job to let you know why this is important, to let you know why you should get excited for this, so that when those competitors walk out to compete, I've hopefully helped lay the narrative out and get everyone fired up at home. That was something that I've always loved to do.
Yeah, and that's awesome. As a broadcaster or an aspiring broadcaster, I always love to tell those stories, because that's one of the main jobs that broadcasters do, is to tell a story that, like, people that are just tuning in that have never been a fan ever, or that they're like, I've been a fan for years, and let's just see how this guy tells his story. That's the awesome thing about it, is that we all have different ways of telling our stories. And that's what I love about this business. Speaking about this business, where did the idea of you becoming a broadcaster begin with? Was it something because you loved sports and professional wrestling that you just started, or how did that come about?
I think I've always been a show off. I don't know. I mean, if you want to go real back in the day, I think when I was a kid, I enjoyed acting, and I did that kind of school. I just loved putting on a show. And then I got into like my early teenage years, and sport was my thing. I loved track and field, and I was a sprinter. And although I could have probably done better if I'd moved to like an event like a 400 meters or something like that, I loved doing the 100 meters, because that's the blue ribbon event. That's when you're standing on that start line, and it's a show. It's a real show, from everyone lining up. It sounds silly, but the psychology on the start line, and the pressure of having to perform. You got 10, 11 seconds, however quick you're on 100 meters. You've got that amount of time to perform, and you've got to nail it. There's no redos, and a lot of that. I love that pressure. I love that you got to do it now. There's no, it's go time. And I think a lot of that pairs back into broadcasting, particularly live broadcasting, because it's go time, guys. You got to do this. You got to, if you make a mistake, you got to keep going. You got to find a way around it. There's no, oh, stop, guys. Can we go back to the start line and go again? So yeah, that's I love that pressure.
It's always that good last second of the ball game. You either score or you don't. It's kind of that kind of pressure, which I absolutely loved as well. And especially if you're doing a live interview and all of a sudden you forget a question, it's like, well, that was a great performance.
Yeah, and so I think going back to that, I think in my teenage years I was an athlete, and I loved that. I loved the pressure that came with it. And then I remember I always loved show business. I always loved film. I studied film and philosophy at university. I loved that world. And I actually remember when after university, I went traveling, and I was like, what, it's that time in your life where like, what do I want to do? I don't know what I want to do. Like, I've got all these big dreams of stuff I want to do, but what can I do that's I could make a reality? Because I'm from a place called Loughborough in Leicestershire. Like, it's not like Hollywood. It's not the showbiz epicenter of the world. I haven't got any contacts in the industry. It's like, how do I do this thing? It's, so I remember traveling. I was like, how can I kind of pair my passions? Because my passions are, I think it's showbiz, and I love traveling. I was traveling at the time. I was like, how can I pair these things together? And actually, being a Blue Peter presenter came to mind, which is one of the shows that I came close to actually hosting, because that's a show we get to obviously host. Also, there's a lot of travel and exploring involved in that. So I was like, Blue Peter sounds like a great job. Maybe I want to be like a TV host. So that's when I think that this thing started rolling. But it was always that thing where throughout I think it's very easy to get pigeonholed when you're growing up. Like, oh, you the sporty kid, or you the acting kid, or whatever.
Mhm.
So it's very easy if you sometimes feel pigeonholed that, well, you're not supposed to do that. You're not the kid who started acting at school or started performing. What gives you the right to do that? So for a while, I was like, am I qualified to do this? No one's qualified to do it when you start out. You got to go
Right.
and earn your stripes. And so for a long time, I kind of doubted myself, and I didn't want to kind of take the leap because I was worried in case I couldn't make it work and I got rejected and someone said I was awful. And then you're like, well, that's my dream popped. And I think a lot of people can have that, where you have these dreams, but you're sometimes scared to chase them because sometimes it's easier to have that dream and be like, oh, I'll chase it tomorrow, than
Right.
actually pursuing it, because you can hold on to the dream. When the work starts, you're like, there's going to be bumps in this road.
Oh, yeah.
So I started working I came back from traveling. I started working in the film industry for a company called Big Talk Productions and working title, doing movies and TV shows and stuff over here. I did that for a while, and that gave me a kind of a foundation of what goes on in the industry to a certain extent. And then I was like, but this is not the way to being, in front of the camera in terms of broadcasting. So a couple of buddies helped me make a show reel, and I sent it out to some agents over here, and I got good feedback. And that was the thing that really spurred me up, because all these agents that represented cool people were like, oh, let's come have a meeting, come have a chat. Regardless if we work together right now or in the future or what, come have a chat. And it was that actually gave me the confidence to push forward with it. Because I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm not being completely slated, so I can only get better. So
Oh, yeah.
that was the kind of thing that gave me the momentum to push forward. And I think, like anyone, it's a hustle. And I'm still hustling now. Like, you hustle, you look for opportunities, you try and build some experience, build up some contacts, and yeah, that's kind of how I figured out this is maybe what I want to do, and started to get that ball rolling.
Yeah, and especially with this industry, like you mentioned before, it's all about networking. It's all about trying to, who and that's, as long as you surround yourself with people that are passionate or say have that same goal as you, that I think that's what ignites that passion. So that.
One thing I'm super passionate about now, and the older I've got, the more I'm aware of this, is surround yourself with people who support your dream and people who are positive. And I'm not saying people should blow smoke up your rear end. They're like, oh yeah, you can walk on the moon in 3 weeks' time. Not that kind of stuff. But people who go, hey, what, you want to achieve this? Cool, you can do it. You got to put in the work. Like, you got to work. But if you put your mind to it, you can do it. I think we've all got people who've come in and out of our lives who are sort of negative Nancy's, like, you'll never do that. Like, what are the odds of you achieving? What are the odds of you achieving that? Is it worth it? Is it worth having a go? Those are the people you kind of want to separate yourself from, because if you don't try, you're never going to know. And I think, let's say in broadcasting and showbiz in general, it's tough. There's a lot of no's out there, and you got to be confident enough and driven enough to be like, okay, I've got 99 no's. I just need that one yes.
Right.
So it's as you say, surrounding yourself with people who can help support that dream, like-minded people you can bounce off, especially in this day and age with social media. It's a cool place to support each other. There's so much room for content out there that you can make content, your buddy can make content, you can support each other's content and help rise each other up. So I think it's a really cool time to be making content.
Oh yeah, especially with the day of social media and kind of this whole, now we can't do physical interviews anymore, so now we have to kind of narrow it down to digital. So I think this is a great time, as you said.
Yeah, I mean, exactly what you're doing. You're taking advantage of this, which is fantastic. And I think, like, I've got a podcast, and when I first started thinking about doing it, I was like, I really want to do these interviews in person, because there's a connection you get when you're in person.
Oh yeah.
But then I was like, do you know what? The people I want to talk to, they're all over the place. Everyone's schedule is all changing. It's a lot easier to find an hour where we can both be on a computer than finding an hour where, I'm going to travel 100 miles there or whatever, and at the last minute it changes. So as much as being in person is fantastic, I think this moment now, it's embracing the digital format. Look, this is great. We're talking to each other. We may as well be face to face.
Right.
We are face to face. So I think this is great. It allows people to knock down those barriers. And going back to what we just talked about, a lot of people, when they're chasing their dreams, often look for reasons not to do something. And in making content like this, it just knocks down another level of not doing it. You haven't got to wait for someone to be in the same area as you or whatever. It's like, cool, have you got this amount of time, and can you be in front of your computer or your phone? The answer is yes, cool. Let's do something. So,
Right.
okay, I applaud you for doing this. This is great. I mean, I've looked at your content. It's great, man. The stuff you're doing. And like for someone like you who, you're a broadcaster. You're not an aspiring broadcaster. You're a broadcaster.
Thank you.
And to be generating this content and putting this stuff out there and using your initiative to do all that stuff, man. Hey, look, hats off to you. This is great, man.
Well, thank you. I mean, of course, especially with nowadays time, it's always best for me to kind of put out content now, because before I was always busy, with school, work, whatever the case may be, just life in general. And then this had happened. So I always say this is a blessing and a curse at the same time. But, it is what it is, and I've been kind of blessed to have this opportunity to get to talk to people and get a good conversation going. So,
yeah, again, I did the same thing. I relaunched my podcast at the start of this because I've been doing my podcasting seasons purely because my schedule changes a lot and I'm busy. So I was like, I didn't want to commit to trying to put a podcast out every week initially. So I did a season and I was like, hey, this is lockdown. There's a lot of people I want to talk to. So, I relaunched my podcast and I'm going to be putting out some more content soon because this is a great moment where, people are at home a lot. People are there. And, the people you want to talk to, they're probably like, I could do with doing something different this afternoon. So yeah, I think a lot of people are struggling in this time, and it's completely understandable. It's a tough time all around, but then some people are thriving because they're adapting and finding ways to do this. Someone like yourself.
oh, thank you. So speaking about Andy Shepherd, of course, what was the inspiration towards your broadcasting career? Was it just the love of sports that you're like, hey, I want to go into this field? Or was it someone in particular, maybe like a Michael Cole, or maybe someone of a, of someone maybe of the MMA scene, or that you've just seen him like, wow, I want to do this?
Well, as I started kind of entering this hosting world before I thought WWE was an option, So we'll come to WWE in a moment, but going back to my sort of baseline broadcasting stuff, I think, again, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an actor. And then I actually worked in casting. I was casting movies, like as the casting assistant and stuff. And, it's a tough industry, acting. And I was like, is that the route I want to go down? And then I kind of thought about hosting and I was like, well, it's still, to put it for lack of a better term, you're kind of showing off, you get to be in front of the camera, you get to do that. And I think after I knew, I trained for a long time in track and field. And once I kind of said to myself, well, am I going to get to the Olympics? Am I going to get to that level where people train to get to, that's what they aim for their entire life? And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get there. I've seen colleagues train for another 10 years and not get there. Am I willing to do that? That's when I was like, okay, well, I think broadcasting is something I want to try. So I think initially I was trying to mix my sporting background with my love of the media. So sport was always something I liked. But really, I think it was something like Blue Peter. Initially, it was something like Blue Peter, seeing those guys, get to do all these cool things, whether it's covering sport, covering travel. I love that variety. There's hosts here in the UK who do sort of entertainment shows, people like Dermot O'Leary. Back in the day, there was Russell Brand, people like Steve Jones. They're people I kind of looked up to initially. A lot of those guys, Steve Jones now, he went from doing kind of youth TV show, he said, and he's now covering the Formula One motor racing over here. So he's moved into sport. So it's people like that who I kind of look up to. Another guy called Jake Humphries, people in the UK will no doubt know. Those are people in the UK that I looked up to as having great broadcasting careers. So they're people I like. And also in the US, people like Ryan Seacrest. How can you not know Ryan Seacrest? Those guys. I love those kind of shows. I love those event style shows. But then when you dial it into WWE, since I've started entering this world of WWE, of course, Michael Cole, he is just incredible. But then people like Tom Phillips and Vic Joseph, who are just fantastic and have helped me so much, and John Quaster as well. Those people have helped me so much over the last couple of years that I can't even put into words. So, especially having sat into the commentary seat recently, it's people like, the aforementioned names. They're the ones I'm looking at now, being like, you guys are putting out great work. How can I try and take steps towards your level? So, in short, when I started out, there's been a lot of influences that still influence me now. But in the WWE world, I mean, the other guys at those commentary desks, they're all world class. So they're real inspirations to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And of course, they're inspirations to me as well. But that's not the case. But anyway, so, we're talking about your transition from broadcasting to NXT UK. Now, the real interesting thought that I've had in my mind, especially as of late, was what was that transition like from going from broadcasting to NXT UK? Because NXT UK was an idea that was brought up early on, I want to say around 2016, which everybody was thinking it was going to happen, but then it didn't happen. And then finally in 2017, it was, it was able to happen. So when you were pitched the idea of NXT UK, what was your first thought?
Yes, sign me up. So I'll rewind a moment to sort of tell you about how I kind of transitioned it. So again, I make content behind the camera as well. So I was actually working for, I was making some content for James Corden's Late Show to show you guys have in the States. So I was making a sketch over here with his parents, and they go to WWE, which was over here at the O2 Arena. So we go there. I was producing this sketch, and WWE gave us a producer. So we're running around backstage being idiots. They give us a producer to kind of like reel us in and make sure we're all good. So it was a wonderful woman called Kasama, and throughout that day we were making our content. It went really well. Got to hang out with all the superstars making stuff. And just before that, I had been hosting this a boxing fight with David Haye. And during that, I'd been backstage interviewing people. Most of my hosting had been kind of cage side, anchoring the shows, that kind of stuff. And for the first time, I was backstage doing those interviews within the show. And so my show reel, you send out to people to see what you can do. It had some stuff that kind of looked a bit WWE-ish. I was interviewing a guy called Shannon Briggs, who is a boxer, but may as well be a WWE superstar. He's larger than life. So I had some stuff that kind of looked a bit WWE-esque. And after we made this sketch for James Corden show, I was like, it's worth a punt, isn't it? It's worth a shot. I'd never considered what opportunities there would be for me in WWE. I hadn't dared to dream. And I dream a lot. I hadn't even dared to dream about being part of WWE. I've actually got a picture of me from that day on the shoot. I'm in the ring, like with my arm up in the air. I'm holding the title belt. Like I'm producing a sketch for James Corden show, but I'm walking around backstage like an absolute fan. It was ridiculous. So after that shoot, I obviously got people at WWE's details, and I was like, hey, if I was gonna send some footage in for potential hosting jobs, who would be the right person to send that into? And then a few weeks or a month or so goes by, a few back and forth emails, I get put in touch with someone, send through my reel, and then they replied saying, hey, yeah, like we like your stuff. And I genuinely thought it's just because maybe they know that I worked on this James Corden stuff and they were trying to just give me some lip service because they wanted to do more. You just think, you're just blowing smoke up, up
Right.
there. But so I made that sketch. It was April of 2016. These conversations happened throughout the summer. I kept talking back and forwards with people like Michael Cole, with Tom Phillips a lot, just chatting. There weren't any opportunities right then. And then I get a message. Actually, I wake up and I have a message from Michael Cole saying, hey, we need to talk. Call me. If you can't talk now, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. If you can't talk now, call me at, I think, like 3 o'clock UK time the next day. I was like, okay, cool. I remember calling Michael Cole and him being like, so we're doing this thing. We're going to crown a UK champion. And it's happening like in 2 months or something. Do you want to be a part of it? I was like, yeah, no question. I'll sweep the floors. I'll do whatever it is.
Right.
Absolutely. And I think he said, have you done any ring announcing before? And I hadn't. No. I'm always a believer that you should just say yes to things. Now, there's certain things like heart surgery, you need some experience for that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I kind of justified to myself that I wasn't telling a complete porky by going, well, I've been in a boxing ring. I've interviewed people in that ring. Interviewing's kind of announcing, I suppose, in the American verbiage. So ring, announcing, ring. Yeah. I've been in a ring with a microphone. I can do this. Cool. And then he's like, great, yeah, cool. Okay, there's a press conference, I think, in like a week's time. See you there. And that was it. And that was how it started. And then, yeah, I somehow got away with it at the first UK tournament. And that's how the wheels began to turn.
Yeah, and like I mentioned before, ever since the UK tournament, then turning into the NXT UK brand that we all know and love today, you've been a very great mainstay and a great influence of the NXT UK brand. I mean, there's no NXT UK without mentioning Andy Shepherd's great or commentating.
Thank
I'm
you.
not saying
Thank
that
you.
because of this interview, but it's true because there's no one who gives that intro. Welcome to NXT UK. Boom. Crowd goes crazy. The UK faithful, going loud as they usually are. And it's awesome. I mean, obviously, we saw you on the first premiere of NXT UK. And, it just, from that start to now has been absolutely just mind blowing to say the least.
It's been a crazy ride for me as well. Again, just rewinding to the ring announcing. I'd never ring announced before. And that was a whole journey for me. And as a host here, and I've hosted live events, and I've hosted, track and field things, and I've hosted that kind of live event stuff. And a lot of what you don't get to see on TV is that the ring announcer is the live event host. That's the person who is taking you through the show in the arena, and that's been so cool to do because you truly build this bond with the fans. And the NXT UK fans I can't say enough good about them. There's a real crew that wherever we are in the UK, they're there. Every takeover, every TV taping, they're there. And you were high-fiving, they're making the noises that come in the ring, there's chants. It's amazing. So it's those moments in between the matches that are super cool where, there's a minute or two before the next match comes out where I get to interact with the crowd. That was something that to build that rapport with the fans has been truly an honor because I've been that fan. I am that fan. My parents, when I was a kid, my birthday present was always them buying me tickets to go and see the wrestling when the WWE were coming over, or even like WCW. They were always buying me tickets for the wrestling. I remember my mum, it's before you could easily get tickets online, my mum like hustling on the phone to try and get me tickets on the aisle because I used to want to high five the superstars. So, I know exactly what it's like sitting in those seats. So to now have the honor of being in that ring, helping take them on the ride, take them through the show, that whole journey in itself has been incredible.
Yeah, and we can see that. I mean, obviously, when I talk to people and they're like, "Man, I remember when I used to sit in those seats, man, and I used to, want to interact with the stars and be a part of the show." And then now they're a part of the show is absolutely amazing because I feel like that, all of us, whether we love the sport or hate the sport, we've all been in those seats before. We've been in that position before as the fan, and then we're still fans to this day, whether we want to admit it or not.
There's a cool moment, actually. If anyone goes back on the network and sees, I think it was one night only. I can't remember what year it was. The main event was Shawn Michaels versus British Bulldog for the European title. And I'm on the aisle. And you can actually see it. I don't know what points in the show, but there's several times in the show there's a big sign that just says Andy and an arrow down. Which I just, even back then, I just wanted to be on a WWE like DVD or VHS or whatever it was back then, to be featured in some way, to me was just mind blowing. And I remember when I got the show back, I could see myself. It was amazing. And there's a moment when Shawn Michaels is walking down the aisle, and he was my favorite. That Iron Man match changed my life at WrestleMania 12. So he was, everything for me. And me trying to high five him, me like literally almost falling over the rails to try and high five him, and I missed. And now, I have the pleasure of, he's such an integral role at NXT UK. To get to shake that man's hand is something that, little Andy would just be like, "What are you doing? How is this a reality?" So it's all those moments like that where it's the same as all the superstars. All the superstars feel the same. We're all pinching ourselves that we have these very surreal opportunities.
Yeah, and it's surreal, but it's also a dream come true in another sense of the word. So, speaking about you did transition from ring announcing to the commentary table. So, can you tell us what was that transition like from ring announcing in front of the thousands of fans in attendance to being behind that commentary table and working with people like Tom Phillips, Vic Joseph, Aiden English at one point, and all these other different commentators?
It's a massive honor. It's actually almost going back to the broadcasting side. So when you're in the ring announcing, as much as you are dealing with if we're talking about this from a broadcasting point of view, in the ring, there's definitely broadcasting skills in there, particularly when we're doing things like takeovers, because you've got to hit your marks. You know, when they say go, you got to go. When you're filling and they say, oh, something's happened backstage, you thought you're doing 20 seconds, you now have to do 3 minutes. All those skills come into play. So doing that stuff was one side of my presenting, my hosting role. But actually going to the commentary desk is back to what I've done for many years now, which is that kind of television broadcasting point. You're much more involved in how the TV product is put together. You're now going from the live event really into that TV department, which is what my background has been for many years now. So it was cool, but obviously commentary. So there's broadcasting, doing your links and all those things. That's something, but then the commentary is something that I hadn't done before. So that's been a real journey, and it's something which is that journey has just begun. This is something that I am continuing to work on. Well, you never stop working on anything, particularly something like commentary, where there's so many layers to what you do. But I've had an incredible support team. The likes of Tom Phillips has been. I can't say enough good words about that man. The support he's given me, the guidance he's given me, everything is amazing. Same for people like Vic Josephs and John Quasto, the time they spent with me, giving me advice, helping me, has been amazing. So in one sense, sitting there in the broadcast booth, it's, again, it's akin to what I was doing in the world of BAMMA and boxing and cliff diving. You're helping get the TV product going, the TV product. But then the commentary is definitely something new, and I love it. I love it. It's a real thrill to do.
Yeah, I mean, I've always loved to hear stories of people that started at the ring announcing position and then transitioned into that commentary position. For example, John Quasto, who made that transition as an NXT live event host. I mean, as a ring announcer, and then on to commentary for 205 Live. Same thing goes with Vic Joseph, who did ring announcing and then transitioned into the commentary role on Raw. So it's so awesome to see that transition, because as an aspiring broadcaster, I love to see both sides of the coin.
I think that's one of the things. One of the things with WWE is they don't, and as you just sort of said, that the people they want seem to be people that can do everything. That they can throw them into the trenches, whether that's go and ring announce an event, go and host a live event, go and host a pre-show, go and do online interviews, go and do commentary. I think that's something that you look at the announce team from top to bottom. No one on that announce team is a one-trick pony. They've all got multiple skills, and I think that's something that's great thing about WWE is that you're on the team, but what position you play in, there's so many options, which is great to do. I know that I've done the ring announcing, I've done live event hosting, the commentary, but then opportunities like hosting the Scottish Champions Round Table, like hosting interviews on NXT Instagram, all those things. It's great because it's working different broadcasting muscles, and that's a real nice thing, that because WWE is so big, there's so many facets to it that you kind of get to stretch yourself in different ways.
Yeah, that's completely awesome. So it's been a great conversation, of course, Andy. So I thank you so much for being on here. So the final question I have for you, I'm sorry that we had to dwindle down to the final, but the final question I have is something that's very kind of interesting, and I really want to get to know the answer to this one. So the first ever NXT UK Takeover, how special was that for you, and why?
Oh, massive. I've already touched on it slightly, and I said that the crowd was something special, but when this started, when I got that first phone call from Michael Cole and he said there's going to be a UK tournament, no one knew what that was going to be. No one knew where that would take us. I think Triple H said in that press conference that the plan is to make a brand here in the UK. And that got all of us going, that's going to be cool. But how does that look? What is that? And then, of course, we had these first UK tournaments. We had Tyler Bate, crown champion. Amazing. Then we went to Norwich. Did some special shows there. Then P and Tyler had that amazing match at Takeover Chicago, and it felt like there's some momentum there. But then it stopped, and I think a lot of people were thinking, what's happening here? Are we having a brand here, or are we just going to have a UK championship that something happens with? Because the last event here was May. That Norwich special was in May, and then I don't know. I think by the turn of the year, a lot of people were thinking, maybe they're not gonna launch something here. There's so many moving parts in terms of doing something like that. Maybe now's not the time. Who knows? And then the Royal Albert Hall shows happened. Then we had that second United Kingdom Championship tournament. We went to the Royal Albert Hall, which for me was just a surreal moment to be there. That was the first time my parents have ever come and see me host anything. And that was super cool for them to see me working with a company that I love, part of a show that they used to bring me to when I was a kid. So that was a special moment. And then that announcement, we were going to get a brand. That felt special. That felt like, okay, we're going to go somewhere now. We've got NXT UK. We've got a name. We've got an identity. We've got a roster. We've got, there's going to be a weekly show. So that was cool. And then then it took a little while for that to kind of get broadcast out. I think it was probably October by the time we started airing shows. And I think, when you look at the history of brands, let's say take NXT, for example, it took them a while to get to their first takeover. And then all of a sudden, back end of 2018, would it be? Yeah, 2018. Guys, January, takeover, Blackpool. So, whoa, it was so quick. It was so quick. And then there was a lot of pressure because we're such a young brand at that point, brand spanking new. And it's the pressure of putting on takeovers. Takeovers have built this reputation as, they're shows that steal the show. Right. They're the shows that people want to tune into because they're just match after match after match of just banging action. There's a lot of pressure. Can we as a brand lived up to that? And everyone who performed on that show truly did. And I remember walking into that ring. And I recall the energy that was there that first United Kingdom Championship tournament. Because back then everyone knew that was something special. We know we're going to crown a champion. That's going to be something great for the UK. Where it's going to go, we don't know. So to go back there some 2 years, and I remember vividly getting into that ring, and all these memories and emotions were coming through me because the last time I stood there was the first time I'd done that role, the first time this brand had seen the light of day. And so that was cool. And then, just moments like the Trent moment, as I said, that hypeness, the crowd were on fire. I don't know. Again, our crowds are always 11 out of 10. That night, man, I don't know how that roof stayed on at the Empress Ballrooms. It was amazing. I think the roster, they want to show they can perform because they want to impress people like Triple H, like Shawn Michaels, like William Regal, like Johnny said. They want to impress all those people backstage so those people continue to invest in the brand to help, grow that brand. And that night they delivered. They delivered top to bottom. It was, a heck of a show. And I think, everyone who's part of that show, everyone who's been part of this brand thus far is going to have fond memories about moments like that. Because, you look at NXT, look what NXT's doing now and the levels they're reaching. NXT UK is really still in its infancy. I think we just had our 100th show a few weeks ago, so that's 2 years worth of TV getting out there. And on the grand scheme of things, it's not a lot of time, but we've achieved so much already. So where are we going to be in another year, another 2 years? Truly, the sky is the limit. And all these competitors now who are part of that, they're building something amazing. So yeah, that first takeover is something that anyone who's a part of it, anyone who saw it, anyone who's there, it's a moment that's always going to stay with them.
That's awesome. And like I said, that will be a memorable takeover to say the least as well. NXT UK takeover Blackpool. I remember I saw it and I was like, holy shit. Like that was absolutely amazing.
Let me ask you this. What do you like about the brand? I mean, obviously you've seen some of the brand. Obviously you're a fan of sport entertainment. What for you, what stands out about the brand to you?
What I find interesting about NXT UK is that it's so unique because it's so based on passion. I think it's more based on passion than, well, I mean, obviously you have NXT over here in the States, but then obviously when you see NXT UK, you see all these different, you obviously feel the crowd, the very energized crowd of the UK. But what I love about it too is that different, like there's a story being told that's without storyline, if that makes sense. Like it's not necessarily like, okay, so we have Pete Dunne going against Walter and Imperium's getting involved. That's not really like the main thing. The main thing is, okay, we have Walter going against Mark Coffey. we don't know too much about Mark Coffey, but let's see. Oh, now he has Gallus with him. Okay, so then now we got to check out Gallus. Okay, we got to check out, Joe Coffey, and then we got to check out all these other gentlemen that's on the roster as well. So it's kind of what I love about NXT UK is the fact that you don't necessarily have to do the research. You could just look in the ring, and you're like, okay, let's see what these people could do, especially with your guys' women's division. I mean, what Kaylee Ray has done with the women's division as of late is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, you look at the NXT UK women's division in the past, first ever NXT UK women's champion in Rhea Ripley. And then you had Toni Storm, and then you had Kaylee Ray. So, and then not only that, but people like Piper Niven, and you have people, just Ginny, who's been very, very, very underrated in my opinion. People who have came onto the scene like Jazzy Gabbert, for example. I mean, it's such a stacked roster, all around, and it has its own entity. It has its own flavor to it, as you might say, because it's so there doesn't necessarily need to be a main storyline that the commentators or the announcers could say. Is just the story that's happening within the ring between two different competitors. I mean, obviously, I remember seeing the return of Noam Dar, who no one has seen since 205 Live. And, he's really personifying the Supernova persona. And it's so what's interesting for me is that seeing NXT UK become its own show that not necessarily storylines are being in place. I mean, there's obviously storylines being in place because obviously we have I believe it was Eddie Dennis, I think, doing a storyline with Trent Seven, and you don't necessarily have to know those. That's what I love about NXT UK is that as long as you see the competition, the hitting from behind after the match, or that really intrigues me the most about NXT UK is that. Sadly, I can't watch it live because obviously it's way early in the morning. But that's what's awesome is that you get to look back and you look back at, all these amazing matches that had happened. I mean, you obviously cannot go without a doubt seeing the match between, I believe it was Mustache Mountain. I believe it was against Undisputed Era at a Takeover. Yes, I believe it was. At an NXT UK Takeover, and seeing Mustache Mountain get that victory, bringing the tag team.
The Royal Albert Hall. That was the Royal Albert Hall match.
Yeah,
they won the championship. The night the brand was unveiled. Yeah, moments like that.
Yeah, so that's what I love about it is that the brand itself is so unique, and it's so it does, like I mentioned before, it does not need to be gimmicks and storylines being like thrown in your face. It's like, okay, let's take a step back. Let's focus on the people. Let's focus on the athletes that are putting in the work inside the ring. Let's focus on the ring announcer that's, greeting us on site. But that's what I love.
And I think this past few months has shown though what I don't want to say platform, because NXT UK is an incredible brand and people are there and they're making incredible careers there. But when you look at the way that superstars like Pete Dunne, like Rhea Ripley, who she was in NXT UK until the back end of last year. Then within a couple of months, she was NXT Women's Champion, and then fast forward, I think 3 or 4 months, and she's at WrestleMania facing Charlotte Flair.
Right.
In less than 6 months, she's gone from NXT UK to WrestleMania. It shows how NXT UK is developing, nurturing, giving a platform for this talent to shine. And that's been recognized, So I think it's exciting and I think it's cool how the brands are kind of interchanging. Like obviously we had Finn Balor come over at the start of this year. There's a certain amount of fluidity, should I say, between these brands. So it's like, cool, well, you were NXT UK, but it doesn't stop you jumping over to NXT and doing something, and vice versa. So I think that's a real cool thing to have. But for you as an American, do you sort of does the brand, the style, stand out to you in any way, or there's the chance of the crowd? I'm always intrigued to hear what people stateside think of it.
Well, here's the way I interpret things as an American fan of NXT UK and just of wrestling in general. NXT UK has been a brand that has been different than anybody else, especially with wrestling nowadays. I mean, you look at NXT over here in the States, you look at, Raw, SmackDown, and everything that's come before that. There's not really a lot that's been as interesting and as, storytelling as NXT UK. And you're right when you say that, NXT UK, establishes, superstars, and it nurtures them and it gets them from the ground up. Like, for example, I'll say again, he's not that. I believe it's Kenny Williams. I believe that's one of them as well. I think is it Kenny Williams, the guy with the big hair? Yeah, I think so. I think that's who I'm talking about.
The Lucky and Kenny Williams looks like he's from Back to the Future.
Yeah, like people like those that I'm like, okay, and then I see in the NXT UK tournament, oh wow, like I got to check this guy out now. And then same thing with the NXT UK Tag Team Champions, as far as I remember, which is Zach Gibson and James Drake. Absolutely incredible duo. Especially in the the NXT Tag Team division. I mean, of course, they're very, very great single stars, but when you put them together, that puts out for some great tag team wrestling. So
I honestly think, and I think it may have been Tom Phillips that coined this, but the NXT UK Tag Team division is one of the best kept secrets in WWE. Look at the teams that are in there and the matches they're putting on. Wow! And you look at the performances they had. Like, look at the grizzled young veterans. And Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster. Look at the performances they put on stateside in the Dusty tournament. I mean, they are world-class tag teams, and hey, we got them here on our home soil.
Yeah, and like you mentioned before, why did I forget to mention about Flash Morgan and Mark Andrews? I mean, I'm a huge fan of both. I actually, truth be told, I did root for Mark Andrews in the WWE UK tournament. Man, Pete Dunne, why did you ruin my pick? I'm just kidding.
Oh, Pete, always ruining plans.
Oh man, but once again, Andy, I really appreciate this conversation. Really appreciate this this interview. But like I mentioned before I get too off the things, yeah, I think with the especially the fans in the States, I think not a lot of people tune in, especially nowadays due to time and maybe they don't have time in their day to watch NXT UK. But for those who do watch, I mean, go back and watch it. I do recommend it because, again, to me, and I don't know why it gives me this feeling, it gives me the vibe of the old ECW days, which for some reason, and the reason why I say that is because, when you watch Nitro back in the day, or if you watch, WWF, Monday Night Raw, you could always tell what's the main storyline. Austin's facing off against McMahon. Okay, now we know that. Throughout the whole show, that's what we're looking for. With NXT UK, same thing like with ECW, you have your rivalries in there, but that's not what you start off with. But you start off with, okay, we're going to have an opening match between Flash Morgan Webster, with Mark Andrews on his side versus Fabian Eichner. Totally random match, but you know what? I'm a fan of both, so let's go.
Yeah, I think our brand, it's the work these guys do inside the ring is incredible. I think if people haven't seen the brand, check it out. Go back and watch things like our takeovers. If you get time, go watch that first United Kingdom Championship tournament, then watch one of the recent takeovers, and you'll see how much people have grown and developed. I've talked about my podcast earlier, people I want to be friends with. I've interviewed a whole load of the superstars there. You can check out their stories. I think you talked to a few of the guys. You talked to John Quast, haven't you?
Yeah. He's cool.
What a guy. Go back and listen to those kind of things. You'll get a real shape for who these people are. But it's a brand that I think when people discover it, they're hooked.
Oh yeah, it's a great. It's like a great transition from those professional wrestling fans that are a fan of the UK scene, and they're like, you know what, I want to watch something that's that showcases British wrestling well. Like, absolutely.
British. A lot of the superstars, you got people like Xia Brookside, for example, really pride themselves on keeping alive the British form of pro wrestling. And there is a difference. You've got people like William Regal, Finlay. They've brought that style across to the US, and a lot of the superstars here in NXT UK are very passionate about displaying that and keeping that alive. And that's another great thing about WWE. You look at all the brands; they all offer something different. Right. From Raw to SmackDown to NXT UK, 205 Live. There's something to whet everyone's palate, and we're having a great time for sports entertainment. Whatever you want, you can get it. You can get it at the click of a button.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, that's the beauty of social media, and that's the beauty of the WWE Network, which is only $9.99. That's totally
It's free now. It's free.
Well, yeah.
there's now a free plan.
Yeah.
So you can go and check out WWE Network for free. There's a whole bunch of content on there. So yeah, go and whet your appetite.
Yeah, that's totally not sponsored.
I got the plugs in.
Well,
Always working.
Well, Andy, thank you so much for being a part of this interview. Is there anything that you would like to showcase? Maybe, any plugs out there besides the WWE Network, which is now free?
Is it now free? Yeah. Hey, look, no. Again, if you enjoyed this conversation, listen to all of Mike's back catalog. But hey, come and check out mine. If I want to be friends with, again, loads of superstars from NXT UK, WWE, and MMA people and stuff in there. But hey, come and join me on social media at Andy Shep. I'd love to. That's another great thing about the wrestling community is that they're great at interacting and they're very friendly. Everyone's super nice, super cool, and it's a great place to interact. I know actually one of the cool things about NXT UK is that all the superstars are they're often online watching along with the fans, and it's one of those brands where, hey, if you're watching the show and you like Eddie Dennis, you can tweet Eddie Dennis. He's probably going to tweet you back. And it's one of those brands now where if you get in there early, you can really connect with these superstars and follow their journey and and reach out and connect with them in certain ways. So that's another great thing about NXT UK, which makes me very proud to be a part of it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Andy. I really do appreciate it. We love the conversation that we had, of course, and the passion that both of us have. So I really do appreciate that from the bottom of my heart.
Mike, and again, look, it's great to talk to you. Look, you've obviously got a knack for this stuff, and what impresses me, and I'm sure everyone else watching, is that you're putting this content out there. You know what you want to do. You're hustling. You're making stuff. You're building this audience. So hey, thank you for inviting me to be on here. It's been great to chat to you, and I can't wait to follow your journey. I'm pretty sure there's some bright things in your future, so it's going to be cool to see you continue this.
Well, I appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. And until we meet again, guys, thank you guys so much, and I will see you guys in the next interview. Hopefully I get to do this outro right. Thank you, and goodbye.